Hello everyone. As part of video lectures on rock mechanics and static control, I'm going to cover the following topics. Before that, let's recap what we discussed in the previous sessions, so that we won't forget the things. Earlier video, we discussed about the preparation of rock specimen as per ISRM standards. Like how exactly we need to prepare the rock specimen to meet the what you call the International Society for Rock Mechanics standards. Next, understanding various samples, like how exactly the sample preparation takes place, and what are the what you call the different core samples that we'll be using in the laboratory, and their pictures. Like generally, the core sample that we'll be using in the laboratory, they are of NX size, okay, which were gathered like while performing the prospecting or the exploration using what you call a rotary diamond drilling. Okay, then what are the core samples that we'll get it that are collected in the field? Those samples will be what you call that has to be remodeled or modified as per the requirements in the laboratory. Like those samples will be cut using a cutting machine, and they are properly guided, grinded, their surface, so that this surfaces will be flat as per ISRM standards. Then we discussed about the various components of universal testing machine, and what are the various operations that we can perform using UTM. Like as the term UTM, universal testing machine, that itself indicates that it's universally accepted one, using which you can perform so many operations in that. That is why it is called a universal testing machine. Like in case of rock mechanics, okay, using UTM, we can perform the compression test, tensile test, shear test, we can perform. It's like the UTM is not only meant for the rock mechanics laboratory, it is also used for what you call the in the civil engineering and in the other applications as well. Next, as part of this video lecture, these are the topics which I'm going to cover. One is the determination of unconfined compressive strength. Unconfined or uniaxial compressive strength. Like how uniaxial, as the term here itself indicates, what the load we are going to apply on a specimen and a rock specimen, it is in unidirectional. It's not okay. There will not be any what we call lateral direction forces. Okay. Then as part of this experiment, we'll be plotting what we call the stress versus strain graph, and apart from that, we'll be what we call calculate the Poisson's ratio. So upon knowing the what we call the stress and strain and the Poisson's ratio values, we can determine the Young's modulus, and if required, we can calculate using Poisson's ratio, and we can calculate the other modulus of elasticity, like Young's modulus, rigidity modulus, bulk modulus. Also, we can determine by performing this experiment. Then we are going to discuss what is the triaxial test of the confined compressive strength. Confined is nothing but what we call here the stress or the forces on the rock specimen will be applied in all the directions. Like which is what we call the exact what we call scenario of the in situ condition of the rock mass. So so as part of what we call the triaxial test of the compressive strength, we are going to discuss like okay, what exactly the construction features of the triaxial testing machine, and how exactly we are going to use. So what is the purpose of triaxial cell and its construction features, and how exactly we are going to perform the triaxial test. Okay, these things we'll be discussing as part of this. And apart from theoretical concept, as part of this video lecture, like I'm going to play some videos so that you can what you call get to know how exactly these operations will be carried out in the what you call in the laboratory Okay. So this diagram basically depicts, just to reiterate, like how exactly the UTM, universal testing machine, looks like. Like this is what you call the one of the old machine. It as I covered in the previous video lecture, like it consists of 3 platforms: the lower frame, upper frame, the middle frame. Okay. In this case, what happened, right? Between the lower frame and the middle frame, you can carry out the compression testing operations, whereas between the middle frame and the upper frame, we can carry out the tensile stress operations. Okay. So this is what you call the testing frame, whereas the other part which is kind of adjacent to this one, that is called control frame. Like what you call, this is a control unit using which We can control the what you call the load at the rate at which we are applying the load on the rock specimen, and at what load or at what stress it is going to fail. So what you call the at what rate we are going to supply the hydraulic fluid. So those entire control features of the operation of this UTM machine is being present as part of this control unit. So let's move on. That's about a brief outline of UTM. Okay, I think I covered the earlier lecture in detail about this one. What are the different parts of it, and how exactly the latest what you call the UTM machine looks like, and what are the difference between the old versus the new one. Okay, those things I have covered already in the what you call the earlier video lectures. Anyone who missed it, please watch earlier video lectures so that will get to know the what you call the functional features of the UTM. Next, let's move on. As part of this video lecture, we are going to determine the unconfined compressive strength or uniaxial compressive strength. As the name indicates, in this case, the load compressive strength load will be applied uniaxially. That means the load will be applied only in one direction. So, okay, there will not be any force that we are going to apply in the lateral direction of it. That's why it is called unconfined or uniaxial compressive strength. So in unconfined compressive strength, load will be applied in unidirectional. There will not be any lateral forces acting on the rock specimen. Okay, that's why it is called unconfined compressive strength or uniaxial compressive strength. Okay. Now, let us discuss the method of determination of unconfined compressive strength. How exactly we are going to perform the test to determine the unconfined or uniaxial compressive strength of the rock specimen. Okay, in this method, the rock specimen used is of NX size. NX size. See, as I said here in the previous video lecture, also I had shown what you call the pictures of various what you call samples that were collected in the field. So the rock specimen, if the exploration is performed using what you call diamond drilling, then the size of the core that we'll be getting is of NX size. It is a little bigger one. Okay, so it must be of that. Next, the specimen has to be cut and grinded, and it has to be prepared as per what called ISRM standards, so that you can perform the test in the laboratory. Next one, rock specimen should be placed between the platforms of UTM. So these are the mandatory prerequisites to carry out the the unconfined compressive strength. Let me repeat. In this method, the rock specimen used is of NX size, and the rock specimen must be prepared as per ISRM standards, International Society for Rock Mechanics standards, and the rock specimen should be placed between the platforms of UTM, Universal Testing Machine. Okay, let's move on. So this is the diagram of this one testing unit using which you can perform uniaxial compressive strength. So look at here. This is the drive unit, bottom plate. This is the latest one. Okay, bottom flatten and top flatten, and in between, okay, you have placed your test specimen here. And then there are actual deformation gauges that were attached to it. Because see here, as part of this one, we need to find out what would be the deformation whenever you apply the load. What would be the deformation in the rock specimen, both in longitudinal as well as the lateral direction. So upon measuring the the deformation in the rock specimen in both the directions, we can determine the Poisson's ratio. So in order to compute the Poisson's ratio of the specimen, we need to measure these readings, like the deformation both in axial as well as the lateral direction. Next, load frame. So in this case, the rock specimen will be placed between the bottom flatten and top flatten, and the load will be applied using the loading frame. So, and we'll be also measuring the deformation of the rock specimen using the the dial gauge that were attached to the experimental setup. Okay, both the longitudinal as well as the lateral direction. Okay, next one. Okay, look at here. This is another line diagram of the same thing. Like, okay, there is a this is the rock sample, and it is being placed between the two the bottom plate and upper plate or the top plate. And this is a kind of dial gauge here. This is another dial gauge. This is used to measure the deformation of the longitudinal direction. This is used to measure the vertical deformation along the lateral direction, so that we can compute the Poisson's ratio. So this is look at here this diagram. This is a modern method of what you call the modern experimental setup basically. In this case, there are what you call two plates. Okay, I'll show you the zoom part of it. Yep, this one. Look at here. This is the top plate. This is the bottom plate in which we have placed the rock specimen. Okay, now you are applying the forces. Now where are the dial gauges now? See, the dial gauges are the sensors. These are called LVDT sensors. LVDT sensors. So the LVDT sensors are placed as part of this experimental setup, so that they'll accurately measure the deformation in the rock specimen, both in longitudinal as well as the lateral spaces. That is nothing but, like, as part of modern setup, there won't be any specific what you call the placement of what they call strain gauges, okay, as part of the experimental setup, both in longitudinal and the lateral direction. Here the automatic sensors are present as part of this one. Okay, automatic sensors are present, which contains the LVDT, linear variable differential transformer. Okay, using LVDT, we can precisely measure the deformation of the rock specimen, both in longitudinal and lateral direction. So it's the same thing here. Look at here. These are the top plate and the bottom plate, and there are the kind of what you call the sensors which are attached as part of the experimental setup to the rock specimen, so that like it can we can precisely measure the deformations of the rock mass. So this is a modern kind of setup, guys. Don't gets confused. It's a what you call I have intentionally what you call captured this image, because this is where exactly the changes are going on in the field. So it's all a kind of automation now. So there is the manual intervention of taking the readings, or no more actually. It's all computer based now. Like whenever the sensor are connected to the computer, and whatever the load that you are applying, it will be automatically recorded in the automated computer system, and which in turn plots the corresponding graph. So like earlier, actually we used to take the readings, like before the specimen fails, by applying the load gradually, and like we used to try to compute the both the longitudinal and lateral deformation. Okay, so this is a kind of what you call the modern setup. So look at here. The strain gauges are used to measure the deformation in the rock mass for both longitudinal and the lateral direction, as I said this one. But in the latest setups, this has been replaced with the strain what you call the automated deformation detector sensors. So in this method, uniaxial force is applied gradually till the specimen fails. Okay. Next, after the failure of the rock specimen, its failure surface has to be observed. Has to be observed carefully. It has to be observed very carefully, because how exactly it is going to take place. Just a minute. Let me correct this. Has to be observed carefully. Okay, so look at here. This is a kind of simple extension and multiple vertical cracks, multiple fractures, multiple shear, and a simple shear. It's got sheared off like this. It's got sheared off like this, and it's got sheared off like this. And it's got multiple fractures. There are multiple vertical extensions and simple extension. So from this, if I'm observing the failure surfaces of rock specimen, we can easily conclude that in the rock specimen, is there any plane of weakness along which there is a likelihood of failure? How exactly the failure is going to take place, and what would be what they call the normal and corresponding shear stresses acting along the failure plane, and what would be the cohesion that will be acting on this particular plane? Those things we can determine as part of the laboratory experiments. So observation of the failure surfaces of the rock specimen after performing the test is very, very important. Okay, and those images we need to capture. Next one, look at here. So after applying the force, gradually applying the force, this at a particular load, the specimen will fail. So the formula to determine uniaxial compressive strength of the rock specimen is given by P by A. That's much, but force applied by a cross-sectional area. So P is the applied force, applied uniaxial force, and A is nothing but the cross-sectional area of the specimen, area of cross-section of the specimen. Okay, P by A. Next, in this method, load is applied gradually. In this method, so the formula for to determine the uniaxial compressive is P by A. Next, in this method, the load is applied gradually and a graph is plotted between stress versus strain as shown in the figure. As I said here, this was the kind of what you call the manual one. Nowadays, with the modern what you call the equipment setup or the manual laboratory setup, okay, these readings will be recorded what you call automatically by using the software in a computer system, and okay, corresponding graph will be plotted. So here, the strain versus stress graph, if you plot it, right? So there will be gradually increasing stress, and it keep on increasing this. At this particular point, it has reached the maximum of its value, and later it fails. So this portion is called unconfined compressive strength of the rock specimen, where there is a likelihood of failure of the specimen. So from this graph, we can what you call the determine the behavior of the rock mass under various loading conditions. Okay, and what would be the corresponding deformation in the what you call the rock specimen, as in when the we keep on increasing the stress on the rock specimen. So as the stress increases, the corresponding deformation of specimen also increases and reaches a maximum point, and later on what happens, there is a likelihood of failure, it decreases. So this is what exactly the conclusion we can derive by plotting the strain versus stress graph. Okay, as I said here, see, this is a picture like which I have captured automatic recording of the readings, okay, while performing the uniaxial compressive stress. So uniaxial stress versus strain graph plotted by computer-based testing machine. See here, different values are captured, and the corresponding deformation, everything, it's all automatically captured. And so using the formula, it's automatically giving at various location what would be the corresponding corresponding unconfined compressive strength. Then if you plot it, taking all these readings, sequence of readings, and if you plot it, this is how exactly your your curve is going to be. So this graph, computer-based graph, which gives what you call the strain versus unconfined compressive strength. So look at here, as the load, load acting on the specimen keep on increasing, there will be the corresponding deformation, and it reaches a maximum point. Later on, it gets decreases. This is where there is a maximum yield point. So from this, we can easily determine what would be the maximum compressive strength of the mass. Okay, this is what you call the computer-based graph. Let's move on. Next, in this experiment, the strain gauges are used to measure the deformation of the rack sample along axial and lateral direction. Yes, this is what I did. I told earlier, little while ago. Like, okay, there are sensors, right? Look at your deformation gauges. These are kind of manual reading. Next, these are the sensors. So this, look here, these are all LVDT sensors. I'll show you the same setup in the form of a video lecture. Then we'll see. Like I'll show you a demo of one video, beautiful video, how exactly it is being captured. This information is being captured, and how it is being attached to the specimen. So this will be automatically captured, and this is how the plotting of the graph is going to be. Okay. So see, in the experiment, strain gauges are used to measure the deformation of the rack sample along axial and lateral direction. So the corresponding strain is measured, and the Poisson's ratio of the specimen can be determined by measuring. longitudinal and assessment can be determined. Yeah. So next, the Poisson's ratio is mu is equal to lateral strain to the longitudinal strain. Okay. Next, the determination of Young's modulus. So as I said, like we know the stress and we know the strain, we can pretty much determine the Young's modulus. And upon determining the Young's modulus and using the Poisson's ratio, we can determine we can determine the other modulus of elasticity, like what you call here Young's modulus, rigidity modulus, and the bulk modulus. Though the other two modulus of elasticity also can be determined by performing this experiment. So determination of Young's modulus capital E. By determining the stress and the corresponding strain, the Young's modulus of the specimen can be determined using the following formula. Young's modulus E is equal to stress by strain. Okay, next. So this is about what we call the unconfined compressive strength. Okay, 1 second. Let me share a new one. Yep. Look at here. Let me see here. This video basically what you call gives how exactly the what you call the uniaxial compressive strength or unconfined compressive strength can be performed. We are taking the rock sample and we need to measure the diameter of the rock sample like at various locations using digital vernier calipers. Look at here. Here, the diameter of the sample is being measured using digital vernier caliper. Okay, this is what I was talking about, guys. The strain box. Okay. Now, so at various locations, we need to measure the diameter of the sample because if there is any undulation, there will be a what you call the change in what you call change in its diameter. So we need to take the average of it in such a situations. So he has taken the diameter, he has measured the diameter of the specimen at three different locations: top, middle, and the bottom portion of the rock specimen. Okay, so at three positions he has measured this. Then look at here this rock specimen. Okay, this we are going to use it to perform the uniaxial uh, uh, uniaxial compressive strength. So basically, as part of this video, whatever extent so far we have covered, here by taking the rock specimen, is measured what they call the diameter of the sample at three different locations. And if it is same, the fine. And if it is not same, then we need to take the average of. Similarly, he has measured what he call the length of the sample or the height of the sample, right? Height of the sample at three different locations and trying to find out whether it is uniform or not. If it is not same, then we need to take the average of it. So this itself indicates, taking these values itself indicates how what you call precisely we have prepared the rock specimen to meet the ISRM standards. Okay, let's move on. Okay, this is what I was talking about as part of the video lecture earlier. Like what you call this is called the sensors, which basically used to measure both longitudinal and lateral deformation. Look at here; it contains the LVDT sensors in that. Earlier, actually, in a traditional approach or in the earlier methods, basically. Uh, we used to attach what you call the corresponding strain gauges to the rock mass to measure the deformation in different directions. Okay, so what the strain gauge attached along the longitudinal direction and the strain gauge attached along the lateral direction, so that we can measure the deformation of the rock specimen in the both the directions. But in this case, using this kind of sensor kind of box, okay, using LVDT, we can measure the deformation of the rock specimen while performing the test, while perform the both longitudinal and lateral direction, very very precise manner. So that's what. Okay. So here the rock specimen is placed between the what you call the platforms of the UTM, and we are trying to perform the test now, applying the load gradually between the this is lower platform, this is upper platform, and this is where, see here, it's got failed. Yep, it's got failed now. Yes. So as I said, as part of my few minutes back, okay, after the failure of the rock specimen, we need to observe what you call the failure surfaces of the rock specimen. How exactly it got failed? Is there any weak planes, a weak place in the rock specimen along which it got failed? Okay, in this case, see here there is a vertical cracks. That's nothing but it got failed. What you call that due to tensile cracks. These are all called tensile cracks now. Look at here. Look at here, this what you call the fractured portion of the rock specimen. Okay, basically what it gives what you call, earlier one was the vertical cracks, like which got failed due to tensile cracks. Now there is a failure plane, conical kind of thing. So which basically indicates what? There is a what you call the weak plane along which there is a likelihood of failure. There will be a corresponding normal and shear stress or the cohesive forces that will be acting along this failure plane. So observation of these failure planes after performing the test is very very important, so that we can conclude how exactly the rock specimen is failed. Yeah, let's come back. So we watched the video of it, and how exactly the what you call the uniaxial compression test is being performed in the laboratory. Okay, that's how exactly the laboratory setup to uh, carry out this test. Okay, let's move on. So this is about what you call the unconfined compressive strength or uniaxial compressive strength. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Let's move on. Uh, let's discuss the triaxial test or confined compressive strength, guys. What exactly the confined compressive strength? So look at here. In case of confined compressive strength is nothing but what? The load will be acting in all the directions. So let's say this is a block of rock mass. Just sorry, just let me take some time. Yep. So far so good. Yeah. So let's say the forces are acting in in situ condition. What happens? The forces will be like this. Right? Yeah, this is how it is. So look at here. In confined compressive strength test or triaxial test, the load will be applied along all the directions like this. So which is a representation of what? The in situ condition of the rock mass. Am I right? So hence, the triaxial test is a measure of in situ state of stresses acting on a rock mass. So in this case, it is all three-dimensional. Whereas coming to the uniaxial, right? In case of uniaxial, what we did, like the load is being applied only in one direction. So that's what it is, right? It was like this, and the load is being applied what? Like this. So there won't be what you call any kind of forces acting in the other direction, lateral direction. That is why it is called uniaxial. Whereas coming to this one, this is of what? Triaxial. Okay. So this is of what? Uniaxial. Okay? Axial. Whereas this is what? Triaxial. Triaxial. So this is how it is. Okay. So hence the triaxial test is a measure of, what? In situ state of stresses. Okay, in order to perform the triaxial test, the rock specimen, as usual, the rock specimen has to be prepared as per ISRM standards. Okay, in the coming slides, okay, we'll be discussing in detail about like how exactly this test is being performed and what are the what you call the prerequisites, or how exactly the what you call the laboratory testing equipment looks like, and how the what you call the stress or the confined stress will be acting on the given rock specimen. Okay, so let me clear this. Let's move on. Sorry. Okay, yeah, this diagram gives a brief view of what we call the triaxial apparatus. As I said, here, look at here. This is one direction where the load will be acting, right? Whatever the lateral one, this is the direction where the loading acting. If the load acts only one direction, it is called uniaxial or the unconfined. How exactly the confined one? So the lateral direction force is being provided by means of the hydraulic fluid. That's why it is of like this. It is like this. These arrows indicate the lateral forces. Am I right? So this is how the lateral forces is being described. So here the load will be acting on all the sides, all the directions of the given rock specimen. So this diagram vertical basically shows the triaxial apparatus. So the triaxial apparatus consists of a loading cell. This is a load cell, basically, in which the required rock specimen is being placed. Rock specimen is being placed. Okay. We'll discuss in detail about the what you call the construction of the load cell and triaxial cell and all. Okay. So here the triaxial cell contains the rock specimen here, and this will be enclosed what you call in a rubber membrane. I'll tell you how why exactly why we need to enclose it in a rubber membrane in the coming next slides. Okay. And next what you call the lateral forces is being provided by means of hydraulic fluid, hydraulic operated fluid, so that it's a kind of confined one. Okay. See here, what you call the rubber membrane, because this specimen might contain what you call some porous kind of material. So if I without any rubber, without enclosing it, this specimen in a rubber membrane, if I directly place it, right, most of the fluid is being absorbed by this one, or it will flow through this particular rock specimen. So which is a not what you call desired property. So in order to overcome that, basically the specimen is being placed inside a rubber membrane. So this one and this what you call specimen, this setup tracks apparatus is also used to perform the testing on soil as well. So it is used to perform the testing on rock specimen as well as the soil specimen as well. So in case of soil, what happened, right? It contains some moisture or something. So while performing this one, if there is in case of any, mainly in case of soil guys, okay. So if it contains any moisture or anything, we need to drain out that, and we need to measure the corresponding what we call the pore water pressure. So that drained out water, this is an exclusive pipe for that. Pore pressure measurement and drainage. This is what it is. And the cell pressure is being measured. Whatever the lateral force that is being measured by means of this one. So to carry out the experiment on the rock specimen, we don't require this. Basically, because it doesn't contain much of the what you call the moisture and anything. It is of solid one. Whereas in case of soil, yes, what are the specimen that we prepared in the laboratory? Okay, it contains the what you call the moisture between the what you call the grains of the sample. So like whenever you are applying it, the what you call the water content may get drained out. So that has to be taken out, right? So for that purpose, this extra provision is being made. Okay, this is in brief about what you call the outline of the how exactly the triaxial apparatus looks like. Okay, let's move on. Yes. So this is same thing. This is same as this one, and it's a simple another line diagram of it, simplified diagram of it. So this is a rock sample which is being placed in a water what you call rubber membrane. As I said, right, the sample is being placed in a rubber membrane, and there is a porous plate. Because in case of, as I said, what you call this experiment, this equipment is also used to carry out the triaxial testing of the soil. So if the soil contains any of water, it has to be drained out, right? For that purpose, what you call, there will be a what you call a porous plate here, so that it will drain out the water. Okay, and there is the extra provision to measure the pore water pressure and all. Okay, generally we won't be using this to carry out what you call, this provision is present, but it doesn't what you call add any value while performing what you call triaxial test using rock specimen. Okay, so here, and what you call the vertical force is being applied through this, and the lateral force is being applied using what? Using hydraulic fluid. Okay, this is the another what you call the triaxial test equipment setup. Okay, look at here. So the triaxial test apparatus consists of specially manufactured triaxial test chamber. What exactly is the chamber? This part. This is the triaxial test chamber. This part. Okay, and this contains the triaxial cell, this lower part in which what you call the rock specimen. This is a chamber. Okay, so look at here. Yes, this is this everything. This entire step. This is called the chamber. Whereas this is what? The triaxial cell in which what you call the specimen or the rock or the soil specimen is being placed. So that is called cell, whereas this is called a chamber. Okay, so let's move on. The triaxial test operators consists of specially manufactured triaxial test chamber along with okay, along with cell. Okay, test. The rock specimen will be placed in a triaxial cell to carry out the test. So it will be placed inside the cell. So what exactly is the triaxial cell and what are the components of it? So the triaxial cell, it consists of specially manufactured rubber membrane in which the specimen will be placed. Okay, in which the specimen will be placed. Next, the porous discs of the cell is used to drain any water present in the specimen while performing the test. So the porous disc, as I said, right? Yeah, in the previous slide, one second. Yes, yeah, there is porous plates. This, this is mainly used in case of what you call soil specimen. Okay. The porous disc of the cell is used to drain any water present in the specimen while performing the test. Next, O-rings of the cell, because this is to fix the membrane to the specimen. There is a ring kind of thing here. I'll show you a corresponding video on this of exactly assembly of what you call fixing of the rock specimen inside the cell. Okay, and how various components are is being fixed as part of the what you call triaxial cell. So O-rings of the cell are used to tighten the rock sample along with the rubber membrane into the cell. Next, this cell is being placed in a triaxial box, right? So the triaxial cell along with the sample, triaxial cell along with the sample is placed inside a triaxial test box. So this is a cell, guys. Look at here. If you look at your cross section of this is an oil kind of thing. This is your rock specimen. Okay, there is a rubber sealing sleeve, or this is a rubber membrane. It's part of it. Okay, so this is a kind of cross section of the cell. This is your rock specimen. This is where the oil is coming, you know, like it will be exerting this oil inlet. These are all some strain gauges if they wanted to measure, which are attached to the cell. Okay, to measure the deformation of the rock specimen. Okay, next one, this is a rubber, what do you call it, sealing sleeve, rubber membrane. This part. So this diagram basically represents the cross section of the triaxial cell. Right? Okay, let's see. Let me, okay, let's, so in triaxial test, just a minute, before this, let me save something else. Triaxial cell, example. Let me play this. Look at here. This video represent clearly gives an idea of how exactly the specimen is going to be placed in a cell. Look at here. These are all the what you call the porous rings, and this is what exactly your membrane, what you call rubber membrane, and the soil, the specimen is being placed on top of what you call the porous rings now. And there's some sticky kind of thing so that, you know, like to place the membrane exactly. This is a kind of material. Okay. Note here now what you call is placing the membrane. Okay. This is the what you call the membrane. Two layers he is using. Is using here. Look at here. Yep. This is called the rubber membrane. Okay. Next in the top porous plate. Right. Okay. Now this is the top cell vertical attachment which is using, and you will be covering everything with this rubber. So he is pulling them out so that, you know, it will cover everything. Okay, this is about the cell part of it. Okay, Next, this is a triaxial test box. Yep, this one. This is a test box now. So the cell is present inside this. These are the different strain gauges attached to this, and this one. Now it is being attached. So he is tightening the what you call the cell, and along with the box to the equipment. See here. So this is how the triangle test box. Now see, the hydraulic fluid is injecting into this. Gradually it is filling up. It's going up now. Let it fill completely. Yeah. He's injecting it like so that there will not be anything. It will come out of this. Because from the top also, yes, it has come out. The top also, from the top also, you need to exert the pressure. So that's how it is. Okay. Let me share. Coming back to this. Stop showing like this. Okay. Let us see another video. Let me share this. Share this. Share this one. Let's see here. See, this is mainly in this case the clay specimen he is using it. Okay, it's they have prepared this. See here, how he is going to take it out. So this is basically what you call a clay-based specimen, like the specimen which is made of clay. Look at here. This is what the membrane which I was talking about. So this what you call the plastic membrane is being used to cover the entire specimen, so that like whatever the hydraulic pressure that will be exerting, okay, it will not pass through the specimen and it will exert a uniform pressure on the specimen. Okay, this is called the membrane, guys. See here the complete membrane is being completely attached to the what do you call uh, this specimen. Okay, in this case it is clear specimen. So this is how the membrane is being attached to the specimen. Uh, this is what I was talking about as part of previous slides, like O-rings, like which are used to tighten the membrane against the specimen. So this is what exactly they are. See here, this is what exactly the what you call the porous caps that we are keeping. This pipe is meant for to drain out the water. In case of what you call the soil, right? Basically, if it contains anything while performing the test, like if any water that is present inside the specimen, that can be what you call the drained out using this pipe. For that purpose, this pipe is being. So here the first O-ring and this is second O-ring. So second O-ring is also used to tighten the membrane against the specimen. Yes, this is what the cell box, triangular test box now. This is the cell. Okay, now the hydraulic fluid, right? That the other lateral direction forces that is being provided by filling this one with hydraulic fluid now. Look at here. Now it is being filled with the hydraulic fluid now. Yes. So this is about the laboratory setup of the triaxial test beds. That gives some idea, like even if we don't have the corresponding practical setup in the laboratory, the idea behind this what do you call creating this kind of video lecture, because to give both what do you call uh, understanding on the board in a practical approach, like how exactly the same experiment is being carried out what do you call in a practical in laboratory as well. Okay, so look at here, that's what exactly it is. This is where we are. Let's finish up this topic. Okay, now test procedure. So far we discussed like, okay, how to place the specimen inside the cell, and and the cell is being placed inside the test box, traction test box. Then by applying the the forces both in longitudinal and the lateral direction, okay, we can measure okay, at what force it is going to fail. We can perform the traction test. So, as part of the traction test procedure, in the traction test, the axial stress is provided by loading frame, and the corresponding lateral stress are provided by hydraulic fluid at a required pressure. Am I right? So sigma 1 is the the longitudinal, and the sigma 3 is the lateral forces, guys, lateral stresses. So in the above diagram, the axial stress sigma 1 is provided by the loading frame, and the lateral stress sigma 3 is provided by the hydraulic fluid. So this is another the diagram. I just wanted to give some more better idea of how exactly the traction testing setup looks like. Okay, so as I said, this setup is equally used for the soil specimen as well. So there is a the drain out value, pore water pressure, a drain out value, and the corresponding pore pressure we can measure. This is the the sigma 3 value you can measure using trial, this one. Okay, and the axle loading piston, this is where exactly you are loading this one, right? So this is where exactly the corresponding reading is being given by this. And so this is nothing but a sigma 1, and this is nothing but the sigma 3. See this FV sigma 3 is this, and the sigma 1 is this, am I right? So this will give some kind of better understanding of how exactly the load will be acting on the specimen using in a traction testing machine. So this is another advanced traction testing mission where everything is automated, and so like we can straight away get the information capture loaded into the computer system, into the software. So traction system with automatic expandable data acquisition and automatic pressure volume controllers. So if you go through the the websites, there are lots of developments, the equipment wise that we can use in the laboratory to carry out the carry out the traction test. So in traction test, actually, if you are testing equipment wise, there are lots of developments in the field. Okay, like tests are more of more accuracy and kind of automated kind of thing, because the manual intervention will be less. In case of any kind of manual intervention, definitely there will be a chance of errors, but we don't want to the compromise in terms of the precision of the values. So for that purpose, the automated systems will play a vital role. So this diagram basically represents the traction system with automatic expandable data acquisition and automatic pressure and volume controller. Just I have incorporated this just to give an idea like how exactly the development that are going to the developments that are going on in outside world. Okay, it is just to have an idea. Okay, next, during the test, what exactly we'll be doing now? We are applying the load gradually. Okay, both lateral and longitudinal stresses are applied gradually. So the experiment is repeated for different values of sigma 1, that is nothing but axial, and the sigma 3, this is nothing but lateral forces. So different values of sigma 1, the corresponding sigma 3, will be measuring it. Next, the more circles are, because these are only the normal forces, there won't be any kind of shear, right? So the normal force which is acting on any plane without any shear, they're called the principal, am I right? So in this case, the sigma 1 is the major principal stress and sigma 3 is the minor principal stress. So for different values of sigma 1 and sigma 3, till the specimen fails. So, okay, we can plot the Mohr circles now. From the Mohr circle, we can infer the value of cohesion along with the angle of internal friction of failure flame. So nothing but from the Mohr circle, what would be the the cohesive force that will be acting along the cohesive force as well as the angle of internal friction acting along the failure plane, and the shear stress values of the specimen also computed from the Mohr circle diagram. So here, like this experiment is being carried out by applying the load both longitudinal as well as the lateral direction gradually or in a phased manner. And for different values of sigma 1 and sigma 3, we'll be plotting the corresponding Mohr circles. Okay, this is how exact the plotting of Mohr circles is. Traction test results: sigma 1, sigma 3, sigma 3 dash, and sigma 1 dash, like this. Okay, you have got, let's say, test 1, test 2, test 3. You have got different Mohr circles. Okay, if I draw a diagram of this, sorry, if I draw a tangent to all the Mohr circles, that gives what the what you call Mohr's envelope, right? Of the failure envelope. So the intersect made by this tangent on the y-axis, on the shear stress axis, that will give the coercive force, and the angle made by the tangent with the horizontal, that is called angle of internal friction. So the shear stress S is equal to, in this case, how to get this one? The coercive force plus the corresponding normal forces that are acting into tan phi. Phi is nothing but angle of internal friction. So this is what the conclusion we can draw, or this is what the information that we can derive out by performing the triaxial test. Thank you very much. With this, I'll conclude this video lecture. Thank you.